Hello everyone, welcome to today's tutorial on the poem Half-caste by John Agard, which is a clever poem using lots of imagery to illustrate a serious point about labeling anyone with this outdated term. Please pause this video if you wish to make your own annotations from the following slides. Half-caste is a derogatory term for a person who is of mixed race. The speaker begins the poem by excusing himself for being half-caste, though it is evident fairly early on that this apology is chock full of sarcasm. The majority of the poem is filled with the speaker responding to being called half-caste. He provides countless examples of the positive sides to being half-caste, asking himself if it being half-caste is like Picasso mixing his colours, or the dreary English weather that is filled with cloudy skies. The speaker tells the reader that he will soon tell the other half of his story, signifying that his mixed race by no means defines who he is as a person. There is so much more. Stanza 1. It is important here to touch on Agard's diction. The word caste is associated with the word purity. Therefore, it is easy to assume that half-caste is a derogatory term for someone who is in some way impure, and in this case that means they are not of one single race. While this term was once accepted, it certainly is insulting, and today would be considered to be racist and fueled with ignorance and prejudice. Agard also employs sarcasm in his first stanza, seemingly apologizing for being of mixed race. It is evident in the stanzas following the first that he is really not apologizing at all. In fact, he is lauding the fact that he is half-caste. After the first stanza, Agard writes the rest of his poem using a Caribbean English dialect, spelling words out phonetically instead of using proper spelling. Agard also uses very little punctuation throughout the entire poem, lending a sense of urgency to the speaker's response. He is obviously very passionate about this topic, and he feels the need to rush in order to fully defend himself as a half-caste. Stanzas 2 and 3. The second and third stanzas are filled with metaphors. Agard compares being half-caste to black and white piano keys making a symphony, and Picasso mixing reds and greens to create his masterpieces. He demands to know what the person asking him means when he says half-caste. Agard's blatant disregard for punctuation and capitalization is curious here, particularly because he does separate each example he gives with not a question mark but rather a slash, creating an interesting division between each scenario he gives. Again, these slashes add to the confrontational, angry tone of the poem. The speaker is so quick to offer his argument that he has no time for any real pauses. Agard also utilizes repetition throughout his passages, constantly asking the person to whom he's speaking to explain yourself, before giving his examples of what the term half-caste could possibly mean. Agard's second example is far longer than his explanation as to why Picasso's art may be deemed half-caste. Agard compares the English weather to being half-caste, saying the mix of sun and clouds in the sky is always present in England. His anger really shows in this example, using the word spiteful when discussing how the clouds sometimes seem to not want the sun to be visible. The last line, "ah ras," is especially angry. This phrase is a Creole term that translates to my arse, something someone says when they are angrily dismissing another person's argument. Agard uses an allusion to further his point in his third example. The speaker asks the person to whom he's speaking if Tchaikovsky, a famous Russian composer, created half-caste symphonies because he mixed the black and white keys of the piano as he wrote his masterpieces. In the third stanza, the examples of half-caste cease, and the tone comes increasingly angry and accusatory. The speaker takes an inward glance at himself, telling the reader that because he's only half, he can only listen with half his ear, offer half a hand when someone needs help, and dream with his eyes only half closed. It is difficult to separate this stanza by lines since it is several ideas strung together. In the final 6 lines of the poem, Agard says he is only half a human being who casts only half a shadow. But the other person in the poem can come back tomorrow with his whole self, his eyes, ears, and minds. This poem is brimming with sarcasm. One can almost imagine the speaker spitting these words vehemently at the person who dares to assume someone of mixed race is in some way lesser. Stanza 4. The fourth stanza is a continuation of the third, with Agard telling the person to whom he is addressing that if were to come back tomorrow, the speaker will tell him the other half of his story. Agard writes, "And I will tell you the other half of my story." These words are quite powerful. Agard is telling his reader that his race is not his full story. There is so much more to him than what one sees at first glance. In terms of structure, Half-caste is composed of 4 stanzas of varying length, although there does seem to be some symmetry with these stanzas, as the first and last stanza contain only 3 lines, and the second and third stanzas are both fairly long. Perhaps this irregularity in structure is to highlight the frustration and anger he feels on the matter and emulates a tirade. If you have found this video to be useful, please like and comment and perhaps share with your friends. Please also subscribe for similar content. See you in the next one.